Welcome to the deep dive. This week we are jumping right into, well, the pure chaos that was college football week 5. I mean, if you thought the season had sort of settled in, you were very, very wrong. We've gone through the Wire Sports Network's big recap, and what we found was basically a seismic shift in the whole national landscape. So, our mission today is simple. We're giving you the shortcut to sounding like you know exactly what happened this weekend. We're going to pinpoint the standout players, trace the huge shakeup in the top 25 because, yes, the number one spot is gone, and then break down the games that made it all happen.
And that's really the key. Week 5 is always that pivot point. It's where the fluff schedules disappear and you start getting these huge rivalry games. But based on what we saw from YAR, this week wasn't just a pivot. It was a complete demolition of the old power structure. When you see the number one team get dropped, even after a win, that tells you everything. The stakes just went way, way up.
Right. So let's start with the players. The guys who basically put their teams on their backs. On offense, we have to talk about Texas running back Q Weisner. His performance, I mean, it goes way beyond just player of the week.
Oh, absolutely. This is one of those games that defensive coordinators are going to be studying for weeks.
Look at these numbers that YAR pulled out. On the ground, he had 191 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns.
Which is an amazing day by itself.
Exactly. But then, and this is the part that's just wild, he added 141 receiving yards and another touchdown.
Wow.
So you combine that, you get 332 total yards and 3 touchdowns from one guy. It's just a ridiculous display of versatility.
It is, and it's those 141 receiving yards that really change the game.
Right.
Most backs, they'll get maybe 30, 40 yards through the air. When a running back goes over 100 rushing and receiving, it means the defense is in an impossible position. They can't blitz because he'll get matched up with a linebacker. And YAR pointed out these weren't just little screen passes. He was running complex routes, a true weapon.
So that's the unstoppable force. But the week wasn't all offense. On the other side of the ball, you have an immovable object, and this week, that was Indiana's cornerback, D'Angelo Pons.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, a great corner has a quiet game. Pons had a very loud game.
He really did. What's so fascinating here is how many different ways he impacted the game.
Yeah.
He had 3 tackles, so he's not afraid to get physical. But then you add the 3 interceptions.
3.
3. And if that wasn't enough, he took one of them back for a touchdown.
Unbelievable.
So think about that.
Yeah.
A defensive player is responsible for 3 turnovers and put 6 points on the board himself. YAR really focused on how he was baiting the quarterback. These weren't just bad throws he happened to be near. He was creating the opportunities. That combination of physical tackling and, elite ball skills. It's so rare. He changed the entire game single-handedly.
So you've got Weisner on one end demanding all of the defense's attention and Pons on the other just stealing the ball and scoring. What a week.
And all that individual brilliance, well, it translated directly to this rankings earthquake. The biggest story of the week is right at the top. For the first time all season, we have a new number 1. Texas A&M has claimed the top spot. They displaced Texas Tech, who actually falls to number 2. Okay, hold on. I have to ask about that. Texas Tech won. They won big, 55-35. We'll get to the game, but how does a 20-point win get you dropped? I mean, are the voters just reacting to A&M having a better-looking win, or is there more to it? That is an excellent question. And the YAR analysis suggests it's a mix of opponent quality and style points, for lack of a better term. Yeah. Texas Tech won, yeah, but giving up 35 points to Florida in a shootout, it just didn't feel like a dominant number 1 performance to the voters.
Right.
Whereas Texas A&M delivered a really solid, more complete-looking win against a tough Auburn team. They looked, I guess, more invulnerable. But just below them, things are a little more stable. Texas holds at number 3. Kansas State stays at 4. The big new arrival, though, is Georgia Tech. They clawed their way into the top 5.
And that momentum, that excitement, it wasn't just at the very top. The recap made a big deal about teams making these huge leaps up the polls. The 2 names that really jumped out were Nebraska and Notre Dame. YAR flagged both as making, significant upward moves.
Yeah, and a jump like that usually means you beat somebody important.
And then you have the newcomers, the teams that just broke into the party. We've got South Carolina and Louisville cracking the top 25.
Which is always fun. But that means 2 other teams are on the outside looking in now. And that's the pressure. I mean, if you're Texas A&M, the target is squarely on your back now. But what I want you to think about is the pressure on Texas and Kansas State at 3 and 4. They held steady while this chaos happened above them. They have to start winning in dominant fashion now, or they risk getting left behind. The margin for error for that entire top 5 is basically 0.
Okay, so let's tie the rankings back to what actually happened on the field. We can really break down these game results into, I think, three big themes: top team statements, just pure offensive shootouts, and then the thrillers.
Good way to put it. Let's start with those statement wins. A&M backed up that new number 1 ranking with a really strong 49-35 win over Auburn.
35 is still a little high, but
It is, but YAR focused on their efficiency. When Auburn tried to make a run in the third quarter, A&M just answered immediately. They showed they could close out a game against a good team.
and Georgia Tech.
They backed up their top 5 spot with a very clean 31-14 win over Michigan. That's a dominant win against a big-name program. It proves they belong. Then you've got Texas holding at 3. They took care of business against Clemson, 41-28. A comfortable professional win.
Oregon also had a really solid road win at Utah, 36-17. That's always a tough place to play. But if we're looking for the single biggest statement of the week, it has to be Georgia beating Alabama, 42-28.
Without a doubt.
A 14-point win over Alabama is just massive. The recap from YAR emphasized how Georgia just controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. You just don't do that to Alabama for 4 quarters. That win sends a message to everyone that the old guard is truly vulnerable this season.
And you also had Oklahoma getting a crucial 35-28 win over Missouri. A little closer, but it keeps them right in the thick of things. Okay, now for the other side of the coin. The optional defense. In a bunch of these big games, the scoreboards were just absolutely lighting up. Offensive coordinators earned their money this week.
That's for sure.
You mentioned Texas Tech. They dropped to number 2, but you can't argue with their firepower. 55-35 over Florida. But again, giving up 35 points is what opened the door for A&M to jump them. You just can't do that when you're number 1.
Right. And then there was Ole Miss. They put up the biggest number of the weekend, I think. 56-38 over Florida State.
That game was track meet.
It really was. And Penn State got in on the action, too, beating Indiana 49-28. It seems like their whole philosophy is just, we're going to outscore you no matter what.
It does.
So connecting this back, you have to wonder, is this sustainable? Can you win a championship giving up 30, 40 points a game?
That's the strategic question, isn't it? It's fun to watch, but history tells us champions usually have to play some defense. The way your summary kind of hinted at this, that the defensive coordinators for the really elite defensive teams are probably watching this film and, licking their chops. They see a vulnerability there.
All right, finally, let's get to the nail-biters. The games that came down to the wire and directly caused those big ranking jumps.
Absolutely. This is where you prove your team has guts. Take Nebraska. We mentioned they made a big leap. Well, they scraped by Miami in a 36-35 thriller.
A 1-point game.
A 1-point game. And YAR pointed out they had to get a 2-point conversion late in the fourth quarter to win it. That's the kind of high-stakes, aggressive coaching that voters love to see. It shows confidence. And then look at the newcomers. South Carolina earned their spot in the top 25 by beating Kentucky 31-25. It wasn't pretty. It was a gritty, tough win where their defense had to make a stand at the end. That's how you earn respect.
And Notre Dame also made that big leap. They handled Arkansas 48-21.
Yeah, and that final score looks like a blowout, but the game was actually pretty tight for a while. Notre Dame just pulled away in the second half, which showed real composure on the road.
And Louisville kind of snuck in there, right? Less about one big gritty win and more about just being consistent while other teams around them lost.
Exactly. They're the quiet riser compared to South Carolina's loud entrance. Hashtag Chag outro.
So as we wrap up this monumental Week 5, what does it all mean? Well, you're now caught up on the key takeaways from the YR Sports Network recap. We saw some just extreme offense led by Q Wisner and all those shootouts. But crucially, that was balanced by some game-changing defense, like D'Angelo Pond's incredible performance. And all of that led to this huge volatility in the rankings. We have a new number 1. The season is officially wide open.
The whole landscape has changed. The pressure is on everyone now. And that leads to a final thought I want to leave you with. Given that teams like A&M and Texas Tech won with these huge offensive numbers, and Nebraska and Notre Dame made their leaps with clutch wins, think about the 2 newcomers. You have South Carolina, who won that gritty, tough game, and you have Louisville, who rose more quietly. Which of those 2 is more likely to actually hold their spot in the top 25 for the long haul, and why? Do voters prefer the ugly win or the clean one?
That is a phenomenal question to think about as the schedule gets even harder from here. Thank you for tuning in to the deep dive into your sources. We'll catch you next time.